Welcome back to another episode of the Vet Worthwhile podcast. I am James Yost, partner and wealth advisor at Signature FD, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Travis York, owner of 3-1 Advisors. Travis, how are you?
I'm doing great today, James. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. All right, welcome back to another episode of the Vet Worthwhile podcast. I'm James Yost, partner and wealth advisor at Signature FD, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Travis York, owner of 3-1 Advisors. Travis, how are you?
Doing great today, James. How about yourself?
Doing well. Excited for this podcast today.
Are you more excited for the podcast or the upcoming college football season?
Yeah, that's a fair question. Very excited about the Georgia Bulldogs taking the field tomorrow. But I would actually have to say I'm more excited about this podcast.
Wow.
Very excited.
Wow. That says a lot, knowing your commitment to the Georgia Bulldogs. Well, I mean, I'd love to go ahead and just get started by welcoming Bert Hockenberry and Jordan Kay to the Vet Worthwhile podcast. Thanks for taking some time to catch up with us, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
So I've known Bert and Jordan for a long time. Both of them have spent most of their careers working in the veterinary space and helping veterinarians access lending and capital and grow their businesses. But maybe, just like to start by having them share a little bit on their background and why they're passionate about helping veterinarians and how they do that. So Bert, maybe kick it over to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Travis. Yeah, so I have been in the healthcare lending industry for, almost 15 years now. Started back in 2008 and really have spent from 2010 up until current as a vet specific, lender. And currently I am with Provide as the national sales director for the veterinary division. So in the process of building a team to service veterinarians nationally, with the hope of practice ownership.
Very exciting. How about yourself, Jordan?
Yeah. Well, first off, thank you guys for having us. This is quite the honor to get to join you two on a podcast. And to kind of give you a little bit of background, for me, it's a little bit different. I've grown up in this industry. My father works for a distributor in the vet space, and I grew up hopping in the car with him in the summer, going to open houses. So seeing veterinarians, pretty much throughout the time I was 2 or 3 years old.
Does your dad have any pictures of you like locked in a cage or in a dog run?
It's funny. I really do remember Saturdays and Sundays growing up, putting together kennels and runs and helping, unpack surgical lights. Those were the weekend chores that we had growing up between my brother and I. And I swore I wouldn't do what he did. As life would have it, graduated college and was looking for a job and had a really cool opportunity to take over a territory with IDEXX Laboratories. So spent about 3.5, 4 years with IDEXX before I transitioned to the pharmaceutical side with a company called Decra and did 2 years in the territory there. And then 2 years actually working with corporate consolidators. It was until fall of last year, Bert reached out to me and kind of asked about my interest in maybe getting in the lending side. A lot of our conversations expanded bigger than just, hey, this is how you loan money to veterinarians, but this is really how you can help this industry. This is how you can kind of work with individuals who you've known for some time to possibly see how they can become hospital owners or grow their business. The fall of last year, I came over as one of the first outside sales individuals for Provide on the vet team and have really enjoyed getting to work with Bert and the rest of our team to grow this space.
That's awesome. Thanks for providing that background, fellas. I mean, Bert, you've been lending to veterinarians for over a decade specifically. What are some of the new solutions and new ideas that you all are excited about?
Yeah, so I would tell you, James, came over from my previous employer. Over the past, 15 years or so, you kind of shift from being more concerned about the bank, more concerned about your employment, to being able to do the right things for the veterinarian, to be able to offer the right products, to be able to be kind of agile with where the industry is going. And I had basically told myself, if there was ever an opportunity where I felt like it was a better platform to provide that kind of service, that kind of product to the veterinarian, that was something I would seriously consider. the provide opportunity presented itself last year. We made the jump, and I'm really excited about our understanding of the industry, and where the industry is going and what veterinarians need from a financing perspective to be able to kind of maximize their opportunity for financing, whether it's an existing, practice owner or somebody just getting into the business. So I think our understanding of the industry is paramount, but also, it's a little bit more exciting, a little bit a newer perspective where we're coming from. We're very high tech. So the technology takes a lot of the sting out of what the normal application process would be when a doctor is going through financing. It's all online. It's very easy to get through. There's not a lot of printing and scanning and emailing and signing and, all of the tedious kind of things that people don't love to do. Our platform is such as that we streamline all of that for the veterinarian. So those two things tied together, right, for me, this is, I don't think a lot of people think banking is exciting. But from my perspective, it's incredibly exciting to just kind of understand that my background and how things were traditionally done. Travis, you having an SBA background, right, and understanding how tedious that application process can be. Just our ability to streamline that, make it a lot more friendly for the doctor, where they, could be sitting on their couch on a Thursday night and go ahead and get pre-qualified or begin an application. Like that kind of accessibility is really exciting for me. And I think it's cool to share with veterinarians kind of our journey, what we've historically seen, and now how here at Provide, we're able to, make that process a lot more simple for the veterinarian.
So my take is, Bert, you don't see lending slowing down to veterinarians. You don't see access to capital slowing up at all. You actually potentially even see it accelerating.
Yeah. So it's interesting. We've really seen on the consolidation end over the past handful of months, and I think you guys would agree that has started to slow down.
Oh, yeah.
And it feels like that is actually creating more opportunity again in the acquisition space, where some of these hospitals that, have traditionally gone the corporate route with the multiples coming down, with the price of these things coming back more into at least a realm that can be privately financed. A lot of the current practice owners always preferred to sell private as opposed to corporate, but the money was just too great, to do it, right? Like you had a better opportunity financially. When that gap narrows, it feels like that will probably create a bit more inflow of current practices for sale that we'll see in the private market. Also, you have this unique aspect of, a lot of things have changed on this journey, a lot of things. And I go back, Travis, 10, 12 years and, veterinarians were making $75,000, $80,000 and student loan debt was significant. And it was difficult at times to save and prepare yourself for practice ownership, right? The change in the marketplace with corporations being as present as they are and needing veterinarians has really increased their income, but it's also increased the amount of time and effort and energy that they have to put into their craft. And it's created a lot of burnout. So you have this unique, I feel like, this unique pathway coming where you may have more practices back in the market. You have veterinarians that have worked their absolute tails off for the past couple of years. They're interested in something where they have a little bit more, work-life balance, can still make a great income and have a lot more control over their time. And I think the kind of the intersection of those two things is pretty exciting, for the practice ownership business in the years to come.
No, I think that's super, super exciting. I mean, Jordan, maybe to jump over to you, I know we talked a little bit on the front end where, the new lending solutions are really helping veterinarians accomplish the goals that they want to hit. How about for somebody like yourself who, started out your career, maybe seeing a little bit of that back end of the journey and now getting to help on the front end of the journey? What are you seeing both economically, financially, and personally veterinarians accomplish through ownership?
Yeah, I think it's a great question because I mentioned kind of how I grew up, being at open houses when a practice would first, open, or calling on a practice and being there the day they opened up to maybe make sure they had all their supplies they needed. And now kind of moving that process earlier in their journey of having some of those first conversations about, finance and how do we get to the place where they are a hospital owner. I think from a personal side, I think that's kind of where it's been really interesting to hear different perspectives from these owners of, I'm empowered, I have control. Bert just mentioned that. I have control over my schedule of my time. I'm implementing policies that I believe in that maybe I didn't have the ability to do when I was an associate. And it was funny, in thinking about this conversation, I had actually seen an article come out from the AVMA that had this unique chart that was talking about like the well-being of veterinarians and this pretty drastic comparison between being an associate and being an owner, and how increased well-being, really with the factors of compassion, satisfaction, right? The opposite of compassion, fatigue, as well as, overall enjoyment and what they think about the profession was dramatically higher as an owner than it was as an associate. And so you take that chart, which obviously I think the AVMA is very reputable and they do a good job of the research they put out, but it drives this, I think, focus back to where are we in this industry today? We've seen a lot of consolidation. We've heard about the burnout. We've heard about the shortage in vets that we'll see potentially in the next 5 to 10 years. And for Bert and I, what we talk to a lot of veterinarians, a lot of industry professionals is this is actually a great opportunity. This is a time where becoming an owner is very accessible. It provides, I think, one of the biggest enjoyments I see is being a part of the community, being invested, in with the people they are around, serving others. And the financial side becomes, on average, they're going to make, I think from a study I saw, $50,000 more than an associate would. So you talk about from a financial gain, just in what they'll make each year is pretty sizably greater. But they also have that investment in a business that, they can ultimately look to maybe sell or transition down the road. So, ownership, I think, brings a lot more than just bottom line, you're going to make more money. I think it kind of helps to a degree solve some of this burnout problems that we're hearing about day in and day out.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I think the four of us are all entrepreneurial folks and can appreciate the additional joy you get when you are kind of carving your way through and, the of overcoming challenges, dealing with the adversity, reaping the benefits of that. I mean, I have a quick story. I mean, I think it's a good time to kind of transition where we're going to talk more about the opportunities there. But I mean, recently it was with a married couple who they were able to secure a loan. They had been associates, were able to secure a loan for $300,000. And within 3 years from that time period, ended up exiting the business at a valuation of $10 million, which is pretty amazing at that point in time. And, they're in their late 30s. So, that is something that wouldn't have been possible had it not been for folks like yourselves who are out there trying to help people achieve that goal of hospital ownership. So we were just curious if either of y'all had maybe a success story you could tell a little bit about, and it doesn't have to get into the specific details, obviously no names or anything like that, but a success story y'all might have that you think would be relevant to this conversation.
Yeah. And I can take this one, James. Have worked with a number of veterinarians, right? And it's funny, I was talking to Jordan, as we were kind of catching up the other day. The cool thing about this journey, and everything that has changed along the way is just seeing how this opportunity has grown for veterinarians, right? People that that I talked to 10, 11 years ago, that were working incredibly hard to pay student loans and trying to figure out if they could actually afford to practice, to kind of the story you just told, James, right? Like you fast forward 10 years and it's, to a degree, it's like they're cashing a lottery ticket. They're getting, a ridiculous amount of money for a hospital. And it's something that they've built and seen grow over the years. And now they're being financially rewarded. So, this is probably just me being old, right? But the journey through those 10 years and getting to be on that ride with a lot of these veterinarians that have kind of cycled through this almost in 10 years is phenomenal, right? And what we've seen over the past handful of years is a handful of veterinarians that really buy into the information that's available to them, right? So we talk as healthcare lenders, and we've, in veterinary specific lenders, and we've said it for years, a lot of the value in what we do is the people that we can connect you with and the relationships you build. And going through a time when you're going into a practice ownership where you're still associating as a veterinarian, but you have people around you that can help you with this next step towards practice ownership that are going to take some of that stuff off of your plate. And right?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, thinking about that, one of the things that just jumps to my mind is I heard Jordan talking about burnout, Bert.
Yeah.
And then ownership being a path out of burnout. And then you talking about building a team. Can you think of anybody who, you've worked with that, has experienced that? Because it seems so relevant right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Like, and that, kind of goes back to James's original question. We have people that are kind of tapping into the resources that are available today, which are, exponentially greater than we had even 5-6 years ago. And you've seen people, take advice, buy into, become part of these networking groups, just kind of to digest all of the information that's available to them. And with the team around them, look for the most efficient and most current ways to integrate all of these ideas into practice ownership. Have a veterinarian here in the Southeast that started a practice a few years ago. And they call me about 16 months after, and they're like, hey, I think I'm ready to start a second location, which is kind of unheard of in this business, right? Normally you need a practice to grow, to age, and see that it's performing before you take step 2. And that normally takes a handful of years. In this instance, it's less than a year and a half. And you look at the numbers and they were ready to make that jump. And they just were very current on the medicine. They were very customer centric and really, really cared about the experience. And I think when you have that focus and you build the organization or you build the practice around the customer, around the pet, I think that's where you see that feel where people want to, right? It's a good experience to go to the veterinarian, and people enjoy for something at times that can be very stressful. It's a soothing experience and something they enjoy and they feel cared for and wanted. And I feel like that type of interaction, we've seen a lot more of with all the information that's available, and all of the access people have to it. We've just seen a lot of success building the practice around the patient. And when you do the right things, the money comes. And you've seen some very successful financial growth in these hospitals.
Yeah, that's awesome. A lot of great points there. Let's get into the details of how somebody can achieve that goal of hospital ownership for someone who's thinking about it, but is not quite ready to take that leap. But how can they get prepared? So like on our side of the house, we're always looking at personal finances. That's obviously what we do. But how does someone get prepared from a savings and debt perspective to put themselves in position to qualify for, for a loan to start their practice?
Yeah, James, I think it's a great question. And it's something that I routinely talk about every day with veterinarians who reach out to start this process. And I think the first thing you can do is pick up the phone, right? Or have this conversation, because for us, I think so many times we talk to doctors who maybe are ready to buy, right? They've engaged with that conversation, but maybe they're not quite ready financially. So to your point, 3 things that we really start off with that we look for are, first is production. So, what are they producing as an associate? I think it's something that a lot of vets can control. How often are you working? How are you producing in practice? Are you doing certain procedures that are lucrative for the business that you could carry over if you started up a practice or owned? The second would be, what is your existing debt situation? And I think that I have a conversation pretty frequently where you can hear that kind of gasp, that kind of long pause of like, well, I do have a lot of student debt. And for us, student loans aren't really the issue that we run into when debt comes into play. We expect veterinarians to have student debt. We expect them likely to have a mortgage. We expect them most times to have a car payment. But the one thing that we encourage vets day in and day out to stay away from is that credit card debt. So if they can kind of remove themselves from racking up credit card debt, right, they'll be in a really good place to continue down this path of financing. And then the last is liquidity. And really liquidity kind of is an indicator for us of saving capability, right? Are you diligent with your finances? So those are the 3 big things that I initially talk to with clients who come to us to try to get a grasp of where do they sit currently as part of this process.
No, I mean, I think that's great. I mean, if I'm hearing you correctly, I've heard a lot of, well, if I'm a veterinarian, the only way I can do this is go find a partner, or I have to do a joint venture. But if I'm hearing you correctly, I can get a loan to open a hospital, and I don't need to have hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Correct.
I can have student loans and still get a loan. Is that correct?
That's correct. And I remember a veterinarian I called on years ago when I first got into the industry, and we circled back up when I took this role at Provide. And he said, "Hey, I'm cautious to talk to you because I feel like I've run into this wall over the last couple of years of not being able to get financing." And I said, "Do you mind sharing why that might be?" And it was this expression of, well, I don't have generational wealth. I don't have hundreds of thousands of dollars, like you mentioned, that can go towards maybe an acquisition of a practice or going towards starting up my own hospital. And I think that's kind of to the earlier part of this conversation is access to capital, right? Veterinarians they're very conservative with their finances. They're not huge spenders. They're debt averse. And for us as a lender, it's a great person to do business with. And I can remember one of the first dinners I ever had with 5 or 6 vets. I said, "Raise your hand if you'd like to own a practice one day." And all 5 vets raised their hands. And I said, "Raise your hand if you think you can actually do it." And only one person kept their hand up. And I asked if we could go around the table and share why they didn't feel like they were able to become a hospital owner. And the 4 who put their hands down shared with me that they simply just had too much student loan debt. And for me, it was kind of I got to put a smile on because I got to kind of finish with saying, if we took student loan debt off the table as your concern for a path towards ownership, would you be interested in continuing these conversations? And they all, with a resounding answer, said yes. So wow. I think a lot of times it's educating, right? And that's kind of where Bert and I talk a lot about where we start our conversation, right? It's not talking about interest rate. It's not talking about terms. It's not talking about how much money we can loan you. It's really about educating the doctors on our process and kind of what we look for. Because my hope is if a doctor's not in a place today for us to finance a transaction, we want to work with them over the course of however long it might take. to get them prepared to be in a place that they can move forward in a very positive way and again, achieve those dreams of hospital ownership.
No, I think that's the message, right? There is a path out there if you want to access that 100% entrepreneurial ownership and reap significant, meaning financial benefits through hospital ownership. Bert, I may throw it, over to you. Just, Can you talk a little bit about some of the evolution in the products, right? I go back to, unfortunately, I've been, kind of around veterinary lending now for most of my life, but, specifically working in this space for, over 20 years. And, when I first started, you could get an SBA loan, or you could get a loan from a company called Matsco for $250,000. How do things look now? What have you seen change in accessing capital?
Yeah, thankfully we have evolved, Travis. A little bit.
I know evolution's a tough thing in the veterinary industry, so it's good to hear that the lenders are evolving.
Yeah. So when I came into this business, and I always felt low, but after your story, this actually seems a little bit more exciting than it has in the past. Was able to offer $350,000 or $400,000 for a startup veterinarian, right? So was incredible in the respect that it was 100% financing. But as we all know, over time, costs increase. Things just get more expensive, right?
Yeah, that 350 doesn't seem like it would quite get there anymore, because most of the projects I've seen recently, $300,000 might get you all the equipment you really would like to have to start a hospital.
Yeah, and it's certainly not going to cover the construction, right? So you go back from looking at that, right? And we both have a similar perspective. And today, that evolution has led us to a place where startup financing at 100% is approaching $800,000. There's more flexibility inside of structure, right? With an interest-only feature on the front end that lets these veterinarians that are starting from scratch be able to build this thing up at a pace that's comfortable to them without having, a big payment staring them in the face initially. So I think the understanding of the industry and the success of this industry and what the veterinarian needs has allowed, us as a lender to evolve that product to be right sized for where it should be. On the acquisition side, the evolution has really come in, what we would call loan to gross. Typically, veterinary lenders are looking at last year's revenue as the basis for lending. And historically, that number has kind of crept up a little bit from, 75 or 80% of last year's revenue, once we go back in time a little bit, to now where, it's 100%. And along with that, on transactions where there's real estate involved, in many of those situations, we're also able to offer 100% financing on the real estate for a first-time practice owner. So you've gone, from the old school situation, we could do 80%, or you need to put some money into this deal, or what have you, to now where you're almost completely able to cover all of this through bank financing, and then also get a little bit of, a substantial amount really of working capital to help that comfort level or that cushion as you grow the business up.
That's also, that just is to me super exciting. The one thing that I would love for you guys to just touch a little bit on is, I know, Jordan, I can think of, a couple situations where we've worked with, some hospitals that there's a ton of opportunity. They're in a great location, but, maybe the current owner has taken their foot off the gas and all it needs is somebody to step on that gas pedal. And, we've done some, I think, kind of startup with running start. Is that something that you guys are seeing people take advantage of right now as well? And how does the lending work on something like that?
Yeah. So we do have kind of some unique products to kind of what Bert said, and the existing offerings, right? It was, you had your acquisition, you had your real estate, you had your startup. One thing that Bert and our credit team kind of developed that was pretty unique is something called a jumpstart. And to your point, Travis, you have a hospital, maybe older owner, maybe not working quite as much or seeing as many clients, especially in the time of COVID, right? Maybe there's some concern with health or whatever it may be, and revenues are starting to fall. We actually have the ability to look at that business with the right doctor and find a way to finance a transaction where they can actually come in and purchase that business and really rejuvenate it, right? So maybe allocating some capital towards new equipment so they can update the facility, give them some access to working capital, but really provide this unique opportunity that will keep the doors open. Some of those businesses, what you see, I think, time in and time out is the declining revenues. The doctor just works as long as they can, and then they just shut the doors. The doors are shut. If they own the real estate, maybe they're just selling that as maybe kind of their exit strategy, but the business kind of ends. And I think our Jumpstart product really provides, again, that opportunity where it keeps that business going. It allows it to continue to serve the community that it's in and gives a veterinarian the ability to maybe own a practice that might otherwise just go under. So certainly another offering that I think we have that certainly differentiates us from some of our other competitors.
Yeah,
that's great.
If you guys don't mind, just to build on what Jordan was saying, right? Like a lot of the apprehension, and we've seen less, right, as information has become more plentiful over the years. But a lot of the apprehension that veterinarians would have about starting up is, listen, when I flip that sign the first day, I'm not sure who's going to be on the other side of the door. And this product that Jordan is discussing, it's a startup with a head start, right? So it's being underworked because of that. Many, many times, these things are at a very discounted rate relative to what a normal startup would be. And now a doctor walks in there. A lot of these things were second locations where, it was a staffing issue and the doctor just didn't have time with it. So a lot of these scenarios, you have newer equipment, you have a facility that's basically turnkey. You can walk in there, and a lot of times, guys, these things are half the price, right, of the asking price of what you would pay for a startup. So a very cool, and that kind of helps hedge against maybe the nerves that a veterinarian would have when they're starting at zero. You have an active patient base. There's people walking in the door. You have all of the resources, right, and all of the equipment you need to build something up. But you may have a $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 head start from a revenue perspective relative to a startup. So really unique product and certainly exciting. And we're seeing a lot more of these things, over the past handful of years.
No, that's great. I mean, we love the customization, the tailored approach, the versatility of what y'all do, and the way that y'all help your clients is fantastic. So when you're in initial talks and they have, sure, a litany of questions, what are some of the terms that you were able to advise on as you look through a product? Is I mean, it's not just the rate, right? I'm sure there's other things out there that come into play to try to figure out whether or not this specific solution meets their needs, not only today, but also for the future. So would y'all touch on that?
Yeah. So I think that goes back to where we try to customize our loans for each specific borrower, right? I think the offerings that we have, not just different products, but how we can be flexible on what we look at in terms of, obviously not just rate. And I understand there's a lot of attention to that because it's on the news every day, where are rates going? But for us, we think big picture, right? How does the term, the amortization of that loan affect cash flows for that business? Bert touched on it, adding an extra year of interest only for our startups gives them the ability to scale a little bit more, gives them a little bit more runway to grow that business and maybe save some cash for a rainy day or for an expansion or for a second location. I think another thing that we really try to think about, which is something that maybe they aren't even thinking about, which is, are you possibly going to look for doing a second location? Are you possibly going to expand your existing footprint? And how does that all fit in what financing looks like today? So rather than just focusing on this transaction right now, which obviously is important, we try to take the approach of understanding what the client's needs are, maybe beyond the horizon that they see. And I feel like we're one of the best lenders to not only just have that conversation, but set up the structure that empowers them for that success and gives them the ability to do maybe more than they ever thought they could. So it's, again, we understand that people are going to be rate conscious, but beyond just where rate sits today, what can we do to cater that loan, whether it's a 25-year amortization, whether it's a 15-year term on a practice, whether, again, it's looking at an additional year of interest only. We want to be sensitive to all their needs, not just kind of where rate falls today.
No, that's great. I mean, I think, what I heard there is it's all about strategy, right? So if we can kind of take that, and I'm going to ask a two-part question here for you guys is, do you believe in today's market that ownership just happens? And answer that. And then I've got maybe a follow-up on that.
I would think I used to feel this way, Travis. I feel like these days it's more intentional.
Yeah.
And, the preparation, I think, is a lot more advanced than what it used to be. I think that honestly, the confidence of the veterinarian is significantly greater than what I was accustomed to experiencing in the first 5, 6, 7 years of my career in this business. There was always an apprehension about owning a new business, and people would just almost, to a person, gravitate towards, well, listen, this practice was listed, I didn't get it, so I'm just going to hang out and wait for the next one to be listed that kind of fits my eye. And, as a lender and talking to someone that wants to own a business, you would have a startup conversation with them and they're like, kind of just going to wait. Right. So there was this apprehension about starting from scratch. That doesn't seem to exist nearly as much these days. Doctors have a focus on what they want to do. Doctors are growing up. Veterinarians are growing up a lot quicker in this business because of the need for help. And when you sign on somewhere, you get to work in a hurry. Yeah. So you're producing a lot quicker, right? You're spending a lot more time in the hospital, and you're kind of thrown to the fire, where I think it gives you a sense one way or the other of what you want your career to be. And from that standpoint, a lot of the conversations that we've had with veterinarians, they are very focused on, this is what I want to do. This is my time span. And what else do I need to be doing to prepare? Certainly that, to me, is an intentional focus that's very different from, what we were traditionally used to seeing.
Yeah. Touch on that a second. You just hit it. So once they've conceptualized becoming a hospital owner, maybe they're exploring it or they're all, just ready to go. How far ahead do they need to start preparing and planning and getting things lined up before they ultimately decide to move forward?
Now, right? Yeah. Like that conversation, it cannot happen too early. Right? Yeah. That's why we're speaking at schools, right? That's why we're talking to doctors at the time they're graduating. It's never too early to have that conversation, in habits, in routines, financially and otherwise, that you can build at an earlier age are only going to benefit you when you are ready to own, right? So, to that point, James, right? Like it's a conversation that the preparation starts now. And I don't care if you're looking at 2 years or 7 years or 10 years, the more information you have, the more that you kind of understand really what your financial options are, right? Like you talk about, different types of loans that are out there between conventional and SBA and what those look like and what those entail. Jordan touched on education earlier. You're educating, these young veterinarians as to what that looks like. And then you're giving them the choice, right? Hey, listen, there's a very good very, very good likelihood that you're going to be able to get financing. But what do you want that to look like? And let's talk about, what you can start doing right now to best position yourself for you getting the best thing that's out there at the time that you're ready.
No, I think that's great. And obviously, one of the biggest things that I've seen is hurdles come up along the way, right? Entrepreneurship is about hurdles and then overcoming those hurdles. So what I'd love for you guys just to touch on quickly is, someone that's considering ownership, what are strategies that they've used to kind of get started and get out of the blocks? And then when you hit a hurdle, how do they overcome those hurdles?
Yeah, I mean, I think I see it every day, right? In terms of these obstacles that we all need to navigate. I think we all kind of agree is like building that team is the foundation for how do you become successful in this process. I couldn't agree more with what Bert just said, which is you can never have a conversation with us too early, because I think we can help kind of arrange this framework for what does it look like to get financing in line. And so that allows the doctor to start preparing, their financial situation to be in the best possible place to get an approval. Beyond that, it's whether it's buying an existing practice and engaging with a broker or networking with a distributor who might have hospitals that won't be listed online, engaging with a lawyer and an accountant in a way that allows to continue to facilitate the structure of who that team is going to be made up of. And truthfully, if you're looking for a startup, the next person after talking to us realistically should be somebody who's in real estate. How can we identify not just a location, but the right location? And we work with a lot of great professionals that have incredible tools, whether that's the integral data that you would want to know about how many pet owners exist in this location, how many cars drive by this space. I think that overcoming these hurdles become much easier when you have a strong team that is invested in your success. And it's fun because the people that Bert's known over his years in this industry and the people that I've known previous to this role, but have met along the way, we try to surround ourselves as professionals with those great people so we can then make those referrals to ensure the success of each vet, because obstacles will come up. A contractor's bid might be too high, or a lease may fall through, or an accountant may look at a practice that doesn't quite fit, maybe the cash flow that they want to advocate for. But in navigating all of those troubles, if you have good people that are kind of supporting you, it becomes much easier to get to that finish line.
I love it. That's great. Well, fellas, we're going to kind of get to a conclusion here. I mean, there's several phenomenal things that I think we got from this time together. I mean, a few things that I specifically heard from y'all. The process that you do has been modernized and is streamlined, trying to be as user-friendly as possible, getting somebody qualified. Secondly, there's a big misunderstanding out there about who may or may not qualify for securing financing for a hospital. And then it really is it might be easier than the average person might think. 3 is that y'all are able to custom tailor your solutions to specifically fit the needs and goals and objectives of the client, which is awesome. And then lastly, you got to build a team. You got to build a team around you of folks who know the industry. They know how to be helpful and are in it together with you. And ultimately, that's gonna help you go as far as you possibly can. So we definitely appreciate y'all's time. If somebody wanted to reach you guys, how could they get in contact with you?
Yeah, check out our website at getprovide.com. Or if you want to reach out to Jordan directly, Jordan.
Yeah. So, my contact is just my name, jordan.k@getprovide.com. And as Bert mentioned, I encourage everyone to check out our website. It's very unique, very user-friendly, actually gives you the ability to get, pre-qualified in a matter of minutes, right there with a click of a few buttons. And we also have a pretty unique marketplace where if you're just interested in what hospitals might be available for you to possibly purchase, have a unique setup there that they can explore and request more information. So really do appreciate you guys having us on, and excited to continue to see what this industry holds. I think there's some great things ahead of us.
Well, we definitely want to thank both of you guys for taking some time to catch us up on the modernization of veterinary capital. We, have a little saying around here that we've seen posted around that says, everyone wants to change the world, but no one wants to change the toilet paper. So I guess, Jordan, have you ever snuck out of the bathroom with an empty toilet paper roll in there?
I probably have, but either got beaten by my mother or my wife. So I probably try to do a pretty good job of replacing the toilet paper whenever it runs out. But I like that. I like that saying.
Well, I mean, I guess, kind of along those lines, what is your one piece of advice for a veterinarian who wants to change their veterinary business world?
I mean, I think engage. I mean, I think there's a lot of people out here who want to help you. I'm a big believer that private practice ownership is what's made this industry great. I mean, I think it's the foundation for why we're all here. And so engage with professionals, engage with people from your vet school, engage with your colleagues, talk about this, right? And the more you'll talk about it, and I thought about this a second ago when we were engaged, we were discussing what people are doing, how intentional are people being for hospital ownership? And it goes to attend meetings, have conversations, because I think you'll find out that there's a lot of avenues to achieve some of your dreams, and there's great opportunity out there ahead of us.
I love it. How about you, Bert? You ever snuck out of the bathroom with an empty toilet paper roll?
I don't know if that's better or worse than leaving the toilet seat up. But to Jordan's point, either one of those, right, in any married household doesn't end well for the guy. That's for sure.
Right. That's very true. So outside of put the toilet seat down and change the toilet paper roll, do you have any advice to change the veterinary world?
Yep. And it's nothing that we haven't touched on a handful of times already, but just the importance in building your network early, having that conversation early. If you're in your second year of veterinary school, or you've been out in the field and associating for 10 years, if you have designs on practice ownership, right, pick up that phone, talk to colleagues, right? Talk to contacts, talk to Jordan, talk to myself, and start to have the conversation of what it's going to look like, and start building that team around you. We can introduce you, to Jordan's point, we can introduce you to some very, long tenured, talented people that are going to help you on that journey. We're in a great time in this industry, right? Like this, we're doing things in the veterinary space that, I don't know any of us thought we would ever get to 10 years ago. And it is still an incredible place to own a business. So do your research, build your team, have your conversations as early as possible. And the preparedness, is going to lead you to success.
Love it. That's great, fellas. Special thanks again, Bert Hockenberry, Jordan Kay from Provide. This has been the Vet Worthwhile podcast. You can find Travis and myself at signaturefd.com/signature-veterinary. And for any listeners that found this content helpful, or if you think somebody could benefit from giving us a listen, please just share it with one friend or colleague. We would appreciate it. Thanks again for joining us. See y'all. Thanks again for tuning in to the Vet Worthwhile podcast. You can find us online at signaturefd.com/signature-veterinary. And then our ask would be, if you found this episode valuable, just think of one friend or colleague that you think would enjoy the content, and just please share. So thanks again. We'll see you next time.
Travis York is the owner of 3-in-1 Vet Advisors and a partner of Signature FD. 3-in-1 Vet Advisors is a veterinary consulting and strategic planning firm of which Signature FD has no involvement or ownership. James Yost is a partner and wealth advisor at Signature FD. Signature FD is an investment advisor registered with the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. 3-in-1 Vet Advisors and Signature FD are not affiliated. Mr. York provides all non-investment advisory services through 3-in-1 Vet Advisors. The opinions of the guests and the contents of this podcast are intended to be educational only and should not be relied upon as investment, tax, business, or planning advice. You should consult with a professional advisor prior to taking any course of action that may impact you or your business.